Hi there, and thank you for tuning in to The Social Circus, where every week we dive into a variety of topics covering social media, mindset, and how to run your business. I hope that you enjoyed today's episode. Hello, my lovely listeners, and welcome to another episode of The Social Circus. Today, I am really excited to be joined by someone who I'm hoping you're all going to know who she is, and also by my lovely friend, Rachael Johns. Welcome, Rachael.
Hello, thank you. It's lovely to be here, and I'm laughing that people would actually know who I am, but that's nice.
Well, if they've walked into a bookshop or a Big W, that's obviously a big bookshop in Australia, hopefully they've seen your books and seen what it is that you do. So for everyone who hasn't heard of you, Rach, do you want to tell us a little bit about, because you're not we were just talking before we started, being an author isn't what it was once, where you gave everything to a publisher and life just happened. You're very much an entrepreneur these days, aren't you? You run your own business, you do your own baz. So tell us a little bit about your journey into becoming the kind of best-selling author that you are today. And then we're going to talk about Substack.
Okay. Well, it was a long journey, so I'll try and keep it short.
That's all right.
Yeah, basically, I wanted to be an author from about 17 when I broke up with my high school sweetheart, and then was terribly, heartbroken, and for some reason turned to writing as kind of therapy. And I was like, oh, I like this. And I decided then and there that I wanted to do it for a job, but it's not as easy as my 17-year-old self thought. And it took like 15 years of many different manuscripts, trying different types of writing, entering competitions, joining organizations before I got my first contract. And I'm quite lucky in Australia in that I can do this for a living. The majority of Australian authors only earn, I think, $18,000 a year. So most people had, like a side hustle, or maybe the writing is their side hustle.
Yeah.
My full-time job. And it's quite different to what I imagined, say, when I was 17 and thinking that I was going to be an author. I thought I was just going to write books. And probably the writing books part, I mean, obviously it's the most important part, but it's possibly 40% probably of what I actually do, maybe. I do, like promotion ongoing, is obviously social media, but I do newsletters, I go and do events at libraries, I go to festivals.
You run a retreat.
An online book club, which you're a member of, and doing retreats. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of that stuff I don't have to do, but it does sort of help grow my writing brand as well, I suppose. But in terms of the minimum things authors do have to do these days, you have to do a lot of your own marketing. And there's a lot less places for traditional marketing, like magazines and newspapers and stuff. So you're very inventive. Publishing used to have a lot of money. It doesn't have as much money as it once did. So, most books aren't splashed around with huge marketing campaigns. And so you've got maybe a little bit that they do, but you need to do it yourself. But also, tax is something I never even thought about, that I am running a business.
Welcome to being an entrepreneur. We all get those joy.
Exactly. So, you do all that sort of stuff. I don't know if that's what you want me to.
It's actually really good, because I'm sure a lot of people like myself have dreams of writing a book, and I think many of us imagine that if we go with a publisher, everything's going to be hunky dory because they're going to do all the hard work for us. Now I know that because you and I've been friends a long time.
Yeah,
you have been under the wings of a publisher or under their banner for many, many years, and yet you still work really, really hard. So, like you said, it doesn't solve all your problems, does it?
No, I think what people often, like this indie publishing and self-publishing, and I know a number of people who do that really well, they often assume that they have to do more, and they do have to do more, right? But the things that they do more of are choosing their own covers, sourcing their own editors, formatting books, uploading them to things like that. But in terms of the marketing, I think there's often a misconception out there that traditionally published authors, I should say, don't have to do any of that because our publishers do it all for you. Now, unless you're Leanne Moriarty or Stephen King or, like a big name, that's just not the case. Yeah.
Yeah. And for yourself, because we're here to talk about Substack today, but I want to kind of touch on, because however we know, it must be over, because our kids were in year 1 and now they're in uni. So it must be over 12 years.
Yeah. math's not my strong point, but it's been a while.
Oh, no, it's lucky to
We
have
met
children.
when our kids were doing chess club together.
Correct. So in those days, I still remember this because we used to sit on our little iPads together while I
Both
was
of us
doing.
are working.
Yes, and I was working, you were working. And I remember back then you were very, very active on Twitter. That was kind of like you were great at it.
That's so funny. I don't even remember barely being on Twitter.
I remember it because I remember thinking, oh, I never liked Twitter. And I
Yeah.
think because you're a country, it was always really big in the country, wasn't it, for our farmers?
I think it was very big in publishing too. Like in terms of marketing, it was more of a place not where the readers were. So it wasn't necessarily the place where you can connect with readers and share about your books, but there was a lot of people sharing, and I assume this is probably in different industries too, but obviously I was connecting with people in publishing. There was other writers, sharing their word counts and articles about writing, publishing news and stuff. It wasn't, I didn't know necessarily see this back then, but it wasn't the place to connect with readers, I don't think. That say Facebook and Instagram became. But yeah.
And I know now you have, as you mentioned, a huge digital presence. Rachel is being very self-deprecating. I mean, you must be right up there in terms of like our top Australian authors now. I know that. Do you know what I mean?
Look, in terms of output, probably.
So you're contracted for 3 books a year, aren't you?
I'm actually contracted for 2 books a year, but I sometimes do a novella as well.
Yes.
Like, so over in the last, say, I think when we met, probably I just literally got published.
You had.
Yes. In that time, over those 12 years or so, I've mostly done 2 books a year, and sometimes occasionally I've done a digital novella or other thing like that. I'm slowing down a bit, although I say that, but then my friend laughs. One of my friends, I said, so I'm 45. I said in my 50th year, I'm taking long service leave. She's like, yeah, I believe it when I say that. That's another thing in small business, right? We don't get all that sort of stuff. You have to go. Okay. But yeah, so I'm contracted at the moment for 2 books a year, but I think that's kind of slipping back to maybe 3 every 2 years, if that makes sense.
Oh, nice. Okay. So let's talk about Substack because I was at your retreat this year and you.
That was the buzzword there.
Well, but it wasn't it. And you and Anthea were talking about Substack and being on there and naming Anthea Substack. And so can we talk about your journey in there? Because I know that you have a great following and do really cool things on there. So how long have you been on Substack as a platform?
Oh, I think maybe almost a year. So not that long. Yeah. I remember it became I became aware of it maybe about 6 months to a year before then. Because a couple of authors who I know and follow were moving their newsletters to Substack or just creating a separate Substack. And I just kind of was like, oh, and I listened to your podcast the other day about, Substack being another platform. And I'd 100% thought, I'm kind of fed up a bit with Facebook and Instagram and having to come up with content and regularly post stuff. Do I really, want another platform? But I felt like at the time what I was seeing on Substack in the writing world was, and it's probably the same in all areas, I'm guessing, it was people teaching something. So like I was following authors who were sharing their process or how they'll go about writing books. And it was very much a how-to thing. And I thought the world doesn't need another author out there telling everyone how to write a book. Half the time, like my process is so messy and stuff. So I was seeing it like that. And then I was trying to, so my newsletter was on MailChimp, and in the publishing world, a lot of, and I don't know if this is in other industries too, people often do newsletter swaps and stuff and or giveaways to try and get more numbers. And so I've never done that because I wanted my newsletters subscribers to be kind of organic and there because they really wanted to, not because they were conned into it by somewhere else, whatever. Or that. So I didn't have a massive newsletter list compared to some people I know. And it kept going just over the 2,000 mark. And that you have to pay on MailChimp if it goes over 2,000. And I was only doing a newsletter every month. So I was just like, it feels like a waste of money. If I was doing a newsletter every day, I'm happy to pay,
Oh, yeah.
So then I've got a virtual assistant and she said to me, really, I think you should go to Substack And I was like, oh, but the world doesn't need another Substack. And she's like, just bear with me, Rachel. She said, you can do what you like. And I've always been very reader focused, I think, in my whole presence, rather than, although I network and talk to other writers and go to events and stuff, as I said, I feel like there's a lot of people out there sharing how to do it. And my aim in my writing and my brand is to connect with readers and to give them entertainment and joy. So I was like, okay, well, I'll try that on there. And I immediately got hooked. She transferred my list over.
Yes.
And I had under 2,000, like just under 2,000, because I kept deleting people that hadn't opened for a while so that I didn't go over the 2,000. And now I'm more like 2,500 on my personal newsletter. I've also a couple of others on Substack too. And that's organically grown since, like I was not growing like that. There's no way I would have added 500 subscribers in under a year. So that was really interesting about Substack. So that was kind of why I went across there. But then I quickly got, I think that for me, I heard you talking about it, it's a lot like blogging. And for me, what I really love about it, is I feel like it's a cross between a newsletter, a blog, and social media.
Yeah.
And the best parts of all of those. So, when I'm sending a newsletter out previously, when I was using MailChimp, and I'm sending a newsletter out to my followers, they can reply to my email, but they can't comment or interact with each other.
Yeah.
And I love that the community, it's like building, because people can comment on my newsletter and they can comment on other people's posts. So I like that aspect of it. And I also like the organic, thing with recommend other people's Substacks and things like that. So I've been playing. I did once a week.
Yep.
I've done once a week for the majority of the time I've been on there. I'm always aware of like overloading people. I don't want them to go, oh my gosh, here's another email from Rachel. But I tried to, offer unique things each time. But I'm cutting back to once every 2 weeks because I asked my, followers what they wanted, and the majority were that. But I also have a paid subscription now.
Awesome. So let's hear a little bit about that. How's that gone?
Again, this was something I never thought I would do, because I wanted I'm not offering how-to or courses and stuff like that. So I thought, even though there's plenty of writers out there, I see that it like just sharing their diary basically and get it paid. But I don't feel that I can do that. I'm not that, I want to actually be giving something that feels like a tangible value almost, if that makes sense.
Yes.
And then I have you asked about contracts. I have decided with my publisher to just do one book next year. And I write, for anyone who has no idea who I am, I write in multiple kind of genres. Loosely, they're quite close, but I've done rural romance or small town romance, general women's fiction, now rom-com. And so we had to kind of decide, well, which book if there's only one book a year. But that's why probably I was writing two, because I like to do both. I like to give my readers both, because some prefer the rural romance and others prefer the general fiction. So, if I do only one, I might be disappointing some.
Yeah.
But we decided for various reasons that next year's book would continue I've got general women's fiction coming out this year, and we do another one next year. So I'm focusing sort of on the general women's fiction for now. But I knew that a number of people would be disappointed, because a number of people found me. I started in rural romance. And so I thought, I'd heard about people doing serial fiction on Substack now. So like Charles Dickens used to do, and a few other back in the day, they wrote their books by just doing a certain amount in a week, and it get posted in the paper or whatever. And so I thought, maybe I will do that as a rural romance, 1,000 words a week. And it's kind of like an interactive community, which is what Substack allows, so that I can put a poll in there and say, who do you want to see more of next? Or what do you want to name the town, and things like that.
So it's almost share our own adventure, because
It was a bit like that. I'm making myself only write 1,000 words to 1,500 a week, and then not keep going, so that people can have input.
Oh, wow.
Comments. So it's a bit of an interesting experiment. But yeah, I would never have done that. I mean, there's probably other platforms out there, I know, but Substack seems to sort of the perfect place. I've got 55 paid subscribers.
Great.
So, that's not bad. I've been doing it for just over a month.
Congratulations. And with those paid subscribers, we're going to get every week a chapter from your book, and so we will keep going. And I guess the thing is, with something like that, I'm not going to stop subscribing, because I need to read the whole lot, don't I?
Well, you hope so. And I don't even know how long it will go. Like, to be honest, when a few people subscribed, or quite a few subscribed annually, because of Substack, you can subscribe annually or you can do monthly. And I'm like, oh, I feel better about the people that are doing monthly, because if I stop or whatever, or I can't do it for some reason, then, you know, they just don't pay anymore.
Yeah.
And what happens to the people that bought a year up front? So it is a little bit of pressure to have to, commit to doing a regular paid newsletter, I think, or well, no matter what you're doing, obviously, if your people are paying for you, you want to actually be giving them the content. Whereas if they're not, if I don't do a newsletter, well,
Yes, the world doesn't stop turning.
but it did see, for those who are thinking about looking into Substack of your listeners, I did, there's a lady who I follow, I can't remember the name now, so I'm not going to mention it, but
That's okay.
she's got quite a big platform. She's a UK writer, I think, and she does paid posts. And I noticed the other day that she had said that she switched off her paid posts indefinitely, or just like postponed them, because she's got really sick. And she just doesn't know if it's going to be 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 3 months until she can come back again. And apparently what happens then is, obviously the people who pay monthly, they just don't pay. It suspends. But those who have paid annually, it just sort of adds the whatever time she's off subscription. So there are,
Ways around it. And that's good.
Yeah.
That's so cool, isn't it? Because as you know, I've just signed up to Substack, so I'm doing a 30 days of posting.
yes, I'm very interested to watch.
So it's been quite hectic, and I like that you can schedule because I'm a few days ahead. But I accidentally imported my email list, so I've got 10,000 people on my email list, and I thought that it would mean that I could email them through Substack and say, "Would you like to become a subscriber?" And actually, it made them all subscribers. And I was like, "Oh, holy crap, that's a lot of people." But my first after that happened,
That means you'll be like,
they're free. Which I feel like I cheated because that wasn't my intention, and B, it's not a true sign of, like you say, that organic growth. So the first day that I imported my list, I had 4,500 people look at that post. So clearly lots of people were interested, which is amazing.
yeah.
But someone paid to subscribe, and I was like, oh gosh, I'm offering no. And I said really clearly, I have no idea what I'm going to do because I'm paying it. And someone sent me a message. They said, I love what you do. I've been following you for years. I love your newsletter that you send through normal channels, and I'm going to subscribe because I'm pretty sure something good's coming. And I was like, well, that's a lot of faith.
There is so much out there. I think it's really lovely that people are being, are willing to pay for content.
Yes.
Whereas for so many years we've been trained to give away content, and we don't have value in our,
Yes.
stuff. But the other thing I noticed is that, or I've learned, there's charts on Substack. So like last night, I'm in fiction, and it says, there's rising stars in fiction, and then there's the bestsellers in fiction. And one thing I learnt after going paid, and someone said, oh, you're in the rising stars, is you have to have a paid subscription to be in the charts.
So I actually paying for a subscription. So that means I better come and subscribe to you then, right?
But yeah, like you have to. So if you have only a free platform, you'll never get in their lists.
Okay. Well, I actually saw that you were talking about your new book, and I was like, I better subscribe to that because I was my best friend and I love your stuff. So I'm all in for that.
Thank you. But yeah, so I think, and the other thing is you can pledge. So some people, like, even if you haven't turned on paid subscriptions, so people can pledge. I do a podcast through.
I was about to ask you about your podcast that you do, and talk to me about that because that looks like it's going really well as well.
Yeah, well, we've been thinking about doing a podcast for a few years. So I do it with my friend Anthea Hodson, who's a historical fiction writer from WA as well. It's called Reading Between Deadlines, and we've been talking about it for years, but none of us are very technical, it's savvy in the digital sort of uploading things, editing things. But Anthea decided she would learn, she shows, and you can teach an old dog new tricks. So she would learn how to edit the podcast, and I can do the recording, the Zoom part, and we pay someone to upload it for us, and to make our Substack look pretty. But yeah, we decided we have never been on another platform first. So, but the good thing is we can have that list that people can really subscribe. Like you can subscribe on obviously all the pod platforms and stuff, but you don't sort of have that opportunity to email out the people that are
No.
your subscribers. So, we don't. But the good thing as well is our podcast, like through Substack, it goes to Apple and Spotify. And it also goes to YouTube if we want to do that. I haven't kind of.
So it's hosted on there. We will have to take a look at that because my hubby does all of the technical stuff of our podcast. And I just do this bit here, which is the recording. This is basically the bit I do and that's part. But we actually use a lot of AI tools for it now because it's so efficient with editing and things. So.
Yeah, yes, I think the system was showing Anthea some of that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, everything's a little bit like more easier and conquerable than it was before.
Yeah, I love that it will blast it out to all of your other platforms. So it's like acting like a hosting platform for those who don't know. All of us pay who have a podcast to have it hosted somewhere. So I use Podbean and we pay like a monthly fee. I think it's like $10 or $15. And then that will do all that work of blasting out. But Substack will do that for us and put it onto Apple and Spotify and YouTube.
Our podcast is free. So because I wasn't quite sure how to manage that side of things, like if we decided to make the podcast paid, well then we couldn't really put it on Apple and that because why would you go to Substack if you can just?
Yes, it doesn't make any sense on
Apple. But then I had that thing. Well, it'd be good to be able to rise in the charts. So we turned on paid subscriptions and just have said, a bit like you said that you had a follower or a reader that. Sorry, reader is in my.
That's all right.
But my follower, whatever, who had said, they value what you do. So we have a few paid subscribers from Read Between Deadlines. And we've just said, look, if you want to and you like it, you can subscribe, but it's always going to be, free to listen to all the podcasts and real that sort of stuff. But but we don't pay Substack unless we have paid subscriptions. So obviously they get a tiny little bit of that. So that's really interesting because I don't pay for putting the podcast on another platform.
Which is great because then Substack is saving you that hosting.
Yeah.
So I love that. So in a little kind of nutshell, Rach, because obviously it's been very successful for you. And like you say, different industries have got lots happening on them. So like the kind of literary and author section's huge and I'm quite love that space. But I know in my digital marketing digital products world, there's a lot going on in that space. So I think really we want to start and encourage people to jump on, don't we?
Yeah, just have a look, as you mentioned in your thing. I think there is an app and it's for me, it feels like a wholesome place so far, and who knows, it might change, and there's currently one of the things I am not loving necessarily about my other social media, which, what Substack is a form of social media. It's just different type. Is that I'm getting blasted by adverts, and it's sending me broke because I see earrings that I want to buy, but then I also get blasted about other things that I'm not interested with. Whereas on Substack, there's some really interesting articles shared and people's opinions and stuff. In fact, I heard you saying about doing a secret US politics one. Yes, please do that. I'll subscribe. I want to hear your thoughts. So it's just really, I think it's just such a good place where people can share their thoughts and opinions on the world. I mean, I have heard about people being bullied off, like Glenna Doyle apparently was, because she came on there and was like, oh, this is great because I have like millions of followers, because she loaded them over and she was, and people got cranky because it's all about more, I think, building organically. But so
I know I do feel a bit ashamed that I've done that.
I wouldn't feel that either because I took my list in. I didn't have quite.
I just didn't know that it would do that. And I think I even put a post up yesterday and said, "Oh my gosh, I accidentally put in my list and now I have 10,000 followers," which was not what I thought it would do.
No, plenty of people have done that and do that, and it's that I did. I just didn't have the, and it's fair. I think there's like if you're like a major celebrity, then they get pissed off about it.
Yeah,
but and
out of ignorance rather than trying to look at me, I'm so clever.
Yeah.
I wasn't going to do that. But so get on there and have a go. And what about starting your own Substack? Just because what I've done is I've jumped in and talked about, because my sector in digital products and digital marketing is what everyone wants to talk about. So I've really leaned into talking about how do you get started. I've shared some of my own I can't call them success stories because most of them are terrible stories, but I've just started sharing like what have I done that's worked and what hasn't worked, and
tragedy stories.
yeah. So I'm kind of enjoying that because I used to love blogging, and then you get busy and things go away, and then obviously a podcast takes a lot of your energy. So that was kind of my creative outlet, and I do that every week. But I'm like kind of enjoying. Don't know if I'll keep up daily, but I'm doing it 30 days.
Really. I think it is. That's the thing. It is sort of like a blogging platform, and I used to love blogging back in the day too. But the fact is, you can follow lots of blogs all in the same place.
Yes, I kind of.
I don't know if you can, and some other tips. Like I know I subscribed to heaps at first, and then get overwhelmed by my inbox. Was suddenly like I'd wake up in the morning, I have 50 different Substack newsletters, and I'm like But I've unsubscribed to some. I just follow them, so you can follow people on the platform instead. Which means, if you're scrolling through the app or whatever, you'll see that they've done a post, but you don't have to have got it in your inbox. But I'm pretty sure in settings too, you can also change it so you don't get all the emails in your inbox. But not for Sarah's and mine. We want you to get those in your inbox.
Yes. Awesome. Oh, look, Rach, thank you so much for coming on and having a chat to me. I hope my readers now you've got me.
Sorry, you'll be saying, hello, readers, to everyone from now on.
I hope my lovely listeners have enjoyed hearing you talk today. We'll come along. I will pop the links in the show note to Rachel's Substacks and her podcast, which is in Substack. And you just need to type Rachael Johns into Google and you'll see all of her books come up. I do love Bad Bridesmaid. That's a really fun book. So thanks for coming on today, Rachel. I really appreciate you sharing your wisdom on Substack. And to all of my listeners, I will catch you the same time next week on The Social Circus. Thanks so much for tuning in to The Social Circus. As your host, Sarah Thompson, I am thrilled that you've chosen to spend your time hanging out with me. I would be so grateful if you could spare an extra moment to go and leave me a review on your favorite podcasting platform. And if you even felt more excited, you could share my podcast with your friends who you think would get great value from it. Thanks so much again for tuning in.